Good afternoon. During the declared emergency in the City of Toronto, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustments of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure you include your name, address, and email address, because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with our decision, it may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure today is that I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. When an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant will proceed with their presentation if required. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. When addressing the committee, please state your name and address and confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will present the application to the committee first. Please note, the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. If the application is substantially revised, the committee may decide to refer it to ensure the revised application is accurate, and all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals in support of or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all other speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut issues raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, I assume the minutes of the last meeting were confirmed this morning?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Are there any declarations of interest of panel or staff for items in the initial time slot? Are there deferral requests, Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, item number 3 and 4 regarding 22 and 24 Pickering Street. We will have to defer. There was an issue with Canada Post Services, and notices were mailed out too late. And this is also affiliated with a delegated consent, which will also be deferred as well.
Any other deferrals that you're aware
None
of?
that I see.
All right. So let us begin. I think we should start with items 3 and 4. This is a deferral necessitated by the fact that there was some mix-up with Canada Post and the notices didn't go out on time. So I'm going to call for a motion on both 3 and 4 for a deferral. Carl? We can't hear you, Carl. You're muted.
Pardon me, yes, I would so move a deferral, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Seconder? Larry, all in favor of the deferral? Thank you. Oh, okay. Yim, do you have a problem, Yim?
Hey, we can hear you.
Sorry. Sorry, guys. Can you hear me now? I couldn't hear you guys before.
Yes, we can hear you now.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, because I have my headphone plugged in. Couldn't figure out what happened. Okay, now I'm okay. Thank you.
Oh. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let us move on to first item, 30 Dacker Crescent. Purpose of the application is to construct a new 2-story detached dwelling. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from Ravenna Natural Feature Protection, staff reports from Urban Forestry and Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, and opposition from several locations on Dacker Crescent. So, Mr. Engelman?
Mr. David Eigelman.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, Sir Chair and fellow committee members. My name is David Eagleman of 900 The East Mall, Suite 300. Would the committee like a presentation
Yes.
of the application?
Yes, we have some opposition. We need your brief presentation, please.
Okay, for sure. So through you, Mr. Chair, before getting into the variances, I would like to note that community planning staff, urban forestry, the TRCA and RNFP all have no objections to the proposal, and the TRCA has actually already issued a permit for the proposal. I am aware of urban forestry's recommendations to impose standard condition number 1, 2, and 3, and these conditions are acceptable should this application be approved today. Regarding the variances, variance number 1, the front yard setback is proposed at 0.74 meters from the front lot line, whereas a minimum of 6.59 meters is required. The proposed front yard setback does not account for the municipal boulevard in front of the subject property, which functionally serves as part of the front yard. Measured from the street, the proposed dwelling will be set back 8.06 meters. This functional front yard setback is demonstrated in photo number 5 of the submitted photo book, which I now would kindly like to ask staff to pull up on the screen. It would be in the photos, E1, photo number 5. Yeah, thank you. So this photograph was taken in approximately the same location as where the proposed front exterior main wall will be located. And as you can see, there's still an abundance of distance to the street, thereby meeting the intent of the bylaw requirement for front yard setback. Moreover, the proposed front yard setback variance is required entirely as a result of the slope hazard conditions on the subject property and was designed intentionally to ensure that the proposal would be to the TRCA's satisfaction. Due to the meandering nature of Dacker Crescent, there is no consistent alignment of front exterior main walls along both sides of the street, and the proposed front main wall will be in line with the front yard setback of the adjacent neighbor at 32 Dacker Crescent. There have been previous approvals for front yard setback variances as well within the neighborhood, similar to what is being proposed through this application, which demonstrates that the proposed front yard setback will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood. For variance number 2, the front porch encroachment variance is a direct result of the long-term stable toe of slope on the subject property and the proposed front yard setback. This variance would not be required if the proposed dwelling was compliant with the required front yard setback. For variance number 3, the proposed height of 10.08 meters where 9 meters is permitted is a modest increase of the permitted as of right building height and will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood. As demonstrated in the submitted neighborhood photos, the grading and slope conditions in the neighborhood have resulted in dwellings that appear to be very tall from the street. Most dwellings within the neighborhood sit on an elevated slope from the street, which creates this characteristic. As a result, impacts associated with increased building height are less perceivable in this neighborhood as compared to others. The proposed ceiling heights are of a modest 10 feet and 9 feet for the first and second floors respectively, and the proposed height will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood and will be similar to other recent redevelopments in the neighborhood. Variance number 4, the front porch stairs set back to the front lot line is effectively the same variance as variance number 2 and is required due to the proposed front yard setback, which is ultimately the result of the stable toe of slope limit on the subject property. Variance number 5, the FSI is proposed at 1.35 times the lot area, whereas a maximum of 0.35 times the lot area is permitted. For the purposes of calculating FSI as per bylaw 569/2013, any portion of the subject property beyond the long-term stable toe of slope limit is not included within the calculation. So if I could kindly ask staff to pull up the site plan. So if you zoom in there on the proposed dwelling a little bit, you can see at the rear exterior main wall there is a line. That line is the long-term stable toe of slope limit. Anything above that line, as shown on the site plan, so everything above the dwelling, the rear wall of the dwelling, is not considered as part of the lot area for the purposes of calculating FSI. The total lot area is actually 1,155.44 square meters and has a depth of 69.50 meters. However, for the purposes of calculating the proposed FSI, only 259 square meters is considered as the total lot area. If the entire lot area was considered for the purposes of calculating FSI, the proposed FSI would be 0.3 times the lot area, which is compliant with the bylaw requirement. The proposed FSI will be spread over 2 floors and will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood, considering that there have been approvals on Dacker Crescent for FSI variances that have permitted larger homes in terms of GFA, such as 28 Dacker Crescent approved at 359.6 square meters, 25 Dacker Crescent approved at 370.1 square meters, and 2 Dacker Crescent, approved at 372.62 square meters.
Mr.
Based on these approvals,
All right, Mr. Eagleman, I hate to interrupt you, but your time is up. Could you just wrap up?
sure. So through you, Mr. Chair, based on the provided justification, I am of the opinion that the proposal fits in with both the existing and planned context for the neighborhood, is consistent with redevelopment trends along Dacker Crescent and the broader neighborhood context. And for these reasons, I believe the application represents good planning and meets the 4 tests under Section 45(1) of the Planning Act. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Larry?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions. To start with, we're going to be hearing, I think, from some of the neighbors who are there some concerns. I just wanted to ask the agent whether there have been any discussions between either yourself or the owner and the surrounding neighbors.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we were retained on this file after the application was already scheduled for a hearing date. The architect on file was dealing with the application prior to the point where we were retained. So I am not up to speed on whether there have been any correspondence with the surrounding neighbors prior to the application being scheduled. However, I personally have not consulted with the neighbors. I do know, however, that we did advise the client to speak to the neighbors, and he did speak to the 2 adjacent neighbors on either side. However, they were not willing to support the proposal.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll hear from the neighbors about that. Secondly, I was just your elevation, and I appreciate the height and everything else too. But it looks like there's a 3rd story there, a rather large attic. Can you just confirm that what I would call the 3rd story or the roof line, that isn't habitable space? Is that just for architectural purposes? It looks like it could support a floor, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is just open to below space. There is no 3rd story proposed.
So it's like the equivalent of a cathedral ceiling then.
Excuse me, not open to below. That is part of the roof structure.
So it's an attic.
To my understanding, yes. There's
Okay,
there's no proposed 3rd story.
No, that's fine. The description talks about 2 stories, but when I look at that looks kind of like you've got a flat roof on top of a main roof. It almost looks like, in other proposals being of that nature, it looks like it's a floor in and itself. But I just wanted to confirm, it didn't look like from the elevations. I didn't see any design or any feature that suggests that's it to use. I just want to confirm with you that is in fact the case.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is the case. There is no living space in the roof line.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Move on to Jag Aurora.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am a medical doctor and
Could-
I'm a right.
Hello, could you please give us for the record your name and your address?
Sure. So my name is Dr. Jagpreet Arora, and I live at 32 Dacker Crescent, which is immediately next to where the permit is being applied for. And I am a medical doctor, and I work full-time out of my house with patients. In all, there are 4 adults living here with altogether, right next to this building that's proposed. Just to clarify, we were not consulted. I've talked to a number of the other neighbors. No one I'm aware of has been consulted in advance. However, what did happen was the evening before the deadline for submissions of letters of objection or support, a relative came and asked for our support. And the letter of objection had already been written, and it was kind of too late to have any kind of discussion or negotiation. I believe the same happened with the other neighbor at 28, but certainly the other neighbors I talked to, other than the two of us, also were not spoken to as far as I know, and I've talked to a number of them. So just a quick summary of what we're concerned about and the negative impact the proposed building, it at least seems to us would have. The first is losing the majority of light on our property due to the size of the obstructing structure. Number two, because of the expanded footprint, having some concerns about flooding that could be serious and are actually not known. And third is a negative alteration to the character of the street. And fourth, a potential safety hazard in the winter with icy or snowy driveway and stairs with blocked sunlight. So I just want to go through these quickly, just make a few comments about each. So the proposed structure will be cube-like, more than 10 meters high. That's almost 40 feet tall, with the variance on the maximum height permitted 3.5 feet taller than is permitted, which would mean a substantial blockage of our light, as well as blocked view, of course. We feel that this sets a negative precedent. And 40% of this towering building would be protruding into the front towards the road, past our house, and it will be significantly in front of both of the adjacent homes. So more than 5 meters in front of our home and more than 10 meters in front of the other adjacent neighbor's home. So that would, to me, look quite out of place and perhaps even be an eyesore on our street. It also seems like it's too close to the road because the front porch stairs will be located pretty much on the lot line. The front yard setback is only at 0.74 meters, so that's nearly 6 meters less than what's permitted. And looking at the houses on the street, most of them are around 20 meters setback. So that would be a big difference. One comment, the applicant's letter stated that the front yard setback is in line with our property, but I need to clarify something important here. It's our home. Our home is actually set back, fitting in with the other houses on the street. However, there is our garage that is located at the north part of the property, and it's only 1 story, and there's no neighbor, because it's ravine, there's no neighbor whose light would be affected. So I didn't think that was a really fair comparison, but anyway, I just wanted to clarify that point. The proposed floor space index being almost 4 times the maximum permitted, 3.85 times, it seems like quite excessive to us. It's an additional 285% over what's permitted. And then also the shoreline hazard limit, reducing that from 10 meters to 0 meters, almost 33 feet, is also concerning. And I'll talk about that when I talk about flooding. So just a few points about the light. Nearly all our sun is in this house, in our home, is from the southeast to the southwest, because we're in a valley, in a treed valley. And usually only we get it from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the solarium, which is at the back of the house, is the highlight of our house. It's south facing, it's only 1 story high. And the new build being only 3 to 4 meters away and so tall, it would cut down on the majority of the sunlight that comes in. And similarly, the sunlight exposure on the 400 square foot deck at our front will even be more substantially blocked. Especially with the height of the new building being 40 feet, it will probably have, very little sun for most of the day. Now, I did submit photos. I don't know if
Dr. Aurora,
they're available.
All right, Dr. Aurora, your time is up, so would you please wrap up now?
Sorry, just quick question. Are the photos there just to show you? that I sent in, the photos? Okay, well, just while they're looking, so basically the Laurentian River runs underground in the valley, and there's significant buildup of water pressure, and we've already noticed changes in the water table flow have led to flooding in adjacent properties. It's already happened on our street. I had competent waterproof contractors who walked off the job. They were highly rated, 30 years experience, because the wet soil kept collapsing in the hole they had dug. We have a sump pump going 24/7. We're really concerned about the expansion of the footprint, larger foundation, loss of ground surface area to absorb water. And then I will stop here because I want to respect the time of the committee.
All right, thank you. Any questions, panel? Okay, next speaker, Megan Barrett.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Dr. Aurora, it seems to me that one of the largest constraints is in the placement of the building is the result of trying to avoid the stable top of bank. And if you look at the site plan, I wonder, could we get the site plan up on the screen for everyone to see? It appears that your home is located considerably west of the proposal, and if the stable top of bank is somewhat consistent, it would appear that you were able to build in a portion of the area beyond the stable top of bank. Can you shed any light on how you were able to build that far back from the road? That's my first question. And my second question is, did the garage that you have constructed, was it the subject of a variance? Because as the applicant has indicated, the garage, and as you've indicated, it is only one story, but it is close to the road, and he seems to have picked up on that setback as being the setback for his building. I appreciate his building's much taller, but I'm interested to know how you got approval to put the garage in, and I'm wondering, are you able to shed any light on either of those questions?
I have been here for 17 years, but I believe that this was all done around 50 years ago. So I wasn't the person who had anything to do with any of that. So only the previous owners would know.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I do know that when we have tried to dig, it's really worrisome to dig to even waterproof our house. It's not stable. In fact, a city inspector came, a water inspector, and told me, I don't know how they let this building be constructed in this place.
Okay, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Megan Barrett, please.
Megan Barrett, you've been unmuted.
I'm so sorry. That was a double unmute situation. Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Megan Barrett. I'm a lawyer with Airden Burles, and I represent the owner of 28 Dacker Crescent, Joshua Tessier. My client's home is immediately to the south of the subject property. And if you could please bring up my objection letter, I think it's letter 3. Thank you. And page 2, please. My client's main concern in this case is the new building's significant proposed encroachment into the front yard, and that's what I'm going to focus my submissions on today. And the variances related to this encroachment are proposed to reduce the required front yard setback by almost 6 meters, and the resulting setback would be about 90% less than what's required in the bylaw, which obviously is quite significant. The variances sought would also result in a front porch that encroaches more than 3 meters in excess of what's permitted. Again, significant in terms of percentage, it's more than 50% of what's permitted as of right. And as we've heard, the front porch stairs, there would be no setback from the front property line. As the committee is aware, it's the applicant's onus to demonstrate that each of the 4 tests under section 45 have been met in respect of each variance. It is my client's submission that the applicant has not done so in this case, and so the requested variances should be refused. They are not minor, do not meet the intent and purpose of the official plan or the zoning bylaws, and do not result in a development that is a desirable or appropriate use of the land. My client submits that the variances do not maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, which requires the minimum front yard setback for the site to be the average of the front yard setbacks of the building on the 2 abutting lots. That's how we get to this as of right minimum front yard setback of 6.59 meters based on this averaging exercise. The proposed variance, as I said, will be about 90% less than what is required in terms of front yard setback. And as a result, the new building would be located significantly in front of both adjacent properties, as you can see in this extract of the site plan that I've included in my letter. Almost 3/4 of the new building would be located in front of my client's property, or my client's house, which would be about 10 meters of blank wall in front of my client's home, and about 5 meters in front of the main wall, which is the key piece here, of the neighbor at 32. It does not meet the intent of bylaw to establish consistent front yard setbacks. That just wouldn't be happening in this case. The variances being sought by the applicant for front yard setback is not a minor deviation from the average, which is the point here. It's significant and will have a noticeable impact on the streetscape. The variances also do not maintain the intent and purpose of the city's OP. If you can please turn to page 3 of my letter. Thank you. Dacker Crescent is a unique street in the city with a distinct character that stems from its location within the ravine and the generous front yard setbacks of all existing homes on the street. The photographs presented by the applicant, we only saw a few of them today, but I'm sure you've had an opportunity, members of the committee, to review those photographs of the neighborhood. They helpfully show the pattern of these deep front yard setbacks that every home has. And the pattern of these setbacks can also be seen from an aerial perspective in these 2 extracts of mapping that I've included in my letter. The proposed variances will dramatically reduce the front yard setback to the point that is out of character with this consistent pattern of deep setbacks on the street, and in that regard does not conform with policy 4.1.5 of the OP, which requires infill development to respect and reinforce the existing physical character of established neighborhoods, and that includes prevailing setbacks. As I've explained, the variances are not minor, and they are also not appropriate for the development of the land. Well, the applicant has referenced other larger homes or not larger than this, but large homes in the area. The reality is that the regulations that apply to this site today, in terms of the TRCA regulations, do not allow for the size of home that the applicant is proposing to build. And on that basis, the proposal permitted by the variances is not appropriate for the development of the site. It's for these reasons that we ask the committee to please refuse the variances.
Any questions, panel? Okay. Mr. Sharples?
It seems like Mr. Sharples has left the hearing room. He wasn't here in the beginning. He was contacted and then joined, and then he seems to have left again.
Okay. Let's go back to Mr. Eigelman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, would you like me to address the neighbors' comments?
Yes, I'm particularly concerned about how far forward your client's house is in relation to the neighboring properties.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, if you actually look at the location map and you look at Dacker Crescent, the location map doesn't really show the entire street, so you kind of have to see the entire street, but you can begin to see it there where it starts at 20 Dacker Crescent. Because of the meandering nature of the street, there is no really consistent front yard setback relative to all the dwellings within the neighborhood. So actually bringing the dwelling forward will be in line with the properties that are further along down Dacker Crescent. So it will be, the front yard setback will be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. And I would also just like to touch on regards to the TRCA's policies. So the current TRCA policy document came out in 2014. So any dwelling that was constructed prior to 2014 was not subject to the TRCA's current policies and could have been constructed past a long-term stable toe of slope line or top of slope line that would be located on the property. That is the reason that 28 Dacker Crescent, the adjacent property, is almost entirely behind the long-term stable toe of slope line that is identified on our subject property. I obviously cannot determine where the long-term stable toe of slope line would be on their property, but it's reasonable to think that it would be a consistent line across the rear of those properties there, and that is the reason why 28 Dackers is located significantly further back than 32 and 30. So the front yard setback will actually be consistent with the character of the neighborhood, and the only reason we are requesting this variance is because we need to satisfy TRCA, and they have already issued a permit, but we needed to obtain a permit from the TRCA, and as per their current policy regime, we cannot propose any gross floor area or any portion of the building behind the long-term stable toe of slope line. Otherwise, the TRCA would not be in support or in a position to issue a permit for this proposal. So I do believe that the front yard setback is consistent with the character of the neighborhood, and it has been done in order to satisfy the TRCA's policy requirements. And the TRCA has no issues with the proposal, and as I said, they've already issued a permit for this proposal. In respect to the building height and the concerns raised with the proposed building height, there have been a number of approvals for height within the neighborhood. The adjacent dwelling at 28 Dacker Crescent was actually approved at 9.56 meters. So we are just 52 centimeters above what was permitted directly next door. Again, 25 Dacker Crescent was approved at 9.7 meters. 15 Beresford Avenue approved at 10.51 meters. 46 Beresford Avenue approved at 10.5 meters. And as I noted during my presentation, due to the grading and slope conditions of the neighborhood, a number, and as you can see in my submitted photos, a number of dwellings are located very high and very tall relative to the street because of the grading conditions. So there are tall dwellings within the neighborhood, and the proposal would fit in with that existing character. In regards to the drainage concerns, I will note that drainage and drainage issues are not within the purview of the committee, and any issues associated with drainage will be addressed through the building permit process. And just one last point to touch on, the neighbor at 32 Dacker Crescent did touch upon the sun and shadow impacts, specifically at the rear of their property. However, as you can see on the site plan, the proposal will not be extending past the rear wall of the adjacent dwelling at 32 Dacker Crescent, and the proposed rear main exterior wall will be in the exact same location as the existing exterior rear main wall. So the rear main wall location is an existing condition on the subject property today. So that was what I wanted to note. I think that addresses their concern. So I would be happy to answer any other questions.
All right, Mr. Engelmann, I just want to put this in perspective for at least myself. Variance number 6, the house is going to be located 0 meters from the shoreline hazard limit. Does that mean that the house is as far back as it can possibly go?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that variance is required because the proposed dwelling is located 0 meters from the long-term stable toe of slope line. That, as I said, is an existing condition on the subject property today. The existing dwelling is located 0 meters as well from the stable toe of slope line, and that variance is purely related to the TRCA, and the TRCA have no concerns or objections to the proposal, and they've already issued a permit. So
All right, but
that's an existing condition.
All right, but my question was, does that mean you cannot put your house back any further?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. We cannot move the rear exterior main wall any further back on the property.
Okay, I also note you have no variance for length or depth.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. The proposed building length is 15 meters, which is compliant with the bylaw requirement and actually below the bylaw requirement. So that was done in order to provide at least some front yard setback.
Okay. All right, panel, Carl, you have a question?
Yes, to the applicant. To the chairman's, or further to the chairman's question, on variance number 6, if you were not successful in getting that variance approved, am I correct in looking at the site plan that's on the screen now, you would actually lose 10 meters of that floor print, of the footprint, right? You'd have to move the back wall in 10 meters, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Member Carl, that is correct. The house would be 5 meters in length if that variance was not approved. And actually, if the existing dwelling does not comply with that, so theoretically almost the entire existing dwelling would have to be removed as well.
And then if the front yard setback was also not approved, you'd end up losing virtually the entire frontage of the building back to the same setback as the neighbor on 32. Is that correct? So you'd actually really only be able to build in a rather small sliver. How wide would that be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify the question, are you saying if we did not get the front yard setback variance, how wide or...
If you didn't get variance number 6 and you didn't get the front yard setback variance, what area of the property would you be left with that you could build on?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Looking at the site plan, it looks as though you'd lose more than a third from the front, and you'd lose about a quarter from the back, and you'd have a sliver in the middle that you could build on. And I just wanted to know if that's a correct assessment of your situation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we would actually lose, if those two variances were not approved, we would lose 16.59 meters, split between, taking it from the back, the rear main wall and the front property line. We would lose 16.59 meters of developable area, which would pretty much render this property undevelopable.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Okay, let's take it into committee now. Any comments? Yes, Yim?
Okay, yeah, just by the question by Kyle, and then we understand if we really read the current bylaw and what the against the application, it's almost the entire, even the adjacent property cannot be rebuilt or some not supposed to be there. So I think that, which means that we really cannot apply all these numbers on this application. And to me, it is actually they will respect the stable top of the bank, and then the building is got pushed not beyond the property on the north. But I think that is a reasonable approach, and the complaint to blocking the sunlight or the view from the property on the south, and I think that because they have a position of being in the south, I do not think they will lose that much sunlight in that sense. And I am in support of the application because if you consider the site specific, it is a very, very tough site to develop. And what I see is that they do not ask for a depth variance or the side yard setbacks, means that they are in good distance in between the two neighbor property. And that's all I want to say.
Larry?
Sure, I'll weigh in. I actually know this area in the street fairly well. It's situated basically in a valley, for all intents and purposes, surrounded by hills to the back. This is a reverse ravine. And the street, as everyone's noted, is configured that the front yards are very, very generous. Backyards in some cases are equally generous, but in some cases they're constrained by that river. Just looking around the street, someone mentioned the character. This wouldn't uphold the character. I think the recent renovations and rebuilds would suggest that there's a number of new large homes that have been constructed on the street. I don't think what's being proposed would be out of care at all. I am sympathetic to the proponent lot configuration, as Jim points out. I mean, there's very little you can do other than forward on this lot in putting a new structure there. I did know one of the letters of opposition cited FSI, tried to cite some terrible FSIs, but I think what I heard today, and understand that now, is that FSI may have been calculated on a basis that didn't include the entire lot, only included the developable portion of that lot subject to RTA's regulation. So I don't frankly have any difficulty with the proposal itself. What I am concerned a little bit about is knowing that Maven residents were quite concerned writing letters of opposition to this location. I am concerned that the applicant and the owner didn't take the occasion and the opportunity to speak with any of the neighbors in any substantive way, and whether there would have been opportunity for some sort of dialogue and maybe addressing, certainly not all the concerns, but maybe addressing some of those concerns. So again, part of me, this is I'm like laying, I'm supportive of the proposal. I'm not comfortable with the press, but having said that, I don't think it's an unreasonable application given the context of the street, context of the lot, and what is being proposed.
I think I agree with what's been said, but I think part of the problem was created by a change in the law back in 2013 or 2014, as the applicant indicated, and that the abutting neighbors were the beneficiaries of the previous law, which allowed them to build further back. Unfortunately, this applicant cannot build further back. He's right to the top of the bank, and he's asking for a variance, and it's 10 meters that he's asking us for in order to get the house back as far as he possibly can. So I think it's just unfortunate that there is this conflict between the bylaws and the time that these properties were built. But I think that the applicant has done what he can to deal with the situation that he's been dealt. And so I would be supportive of this application. Carl, did you have something to say?
The only point I was going to raise, Mr. Chairman and panel members, was that I appreciate in reviewing the agenda, this is an incredibly constrained site and there are very few options available to the applicant. Like my colleague Larry, I'm disappointed that there wasn't discussion with the neighbors, and and I personally think that there are very few options available, but the one alternative that I'd place on the floor for the applicant to respond to is whether a deferral request would be reasonable to allow the applicant to try and negotiate some improvements with the adjacent neighbors. And my reason for that is, with such a constrained site, I think one needs a fairly unique design solution. This is a very standard footprint, a very standard house. There may be, in fact, some adjustments that could be made that would offset some of the difficulties that the neighbors have quite rightly raised. And I would hate to see that option abandoned. So I guess my question would be whether the applicant would consider a deferral to negotiate with the neighbors to see if there's any possibility of installing some improvements that would make this a little bit more palatable to the neighbors, on the understanding that it's not going to go down 2 stories and it's not going to go back 35 feet. I mean, that's just not possible. There isn't enough land with the constraints. But I'd be interested to know if the applicant would be open to negotiating with the neighbors.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Member Carl, I would like to take some time to discuss with my client whether that would be something they are open to. However, I would note that, as you noted as well, there is very little that we can do to address their concerns. The main concerns are with the front yard setback, and there is practically nothing we can do about the front yard setback without either significantly reducing the location of where the front main wall is relative to the front lot line, or either we would have to push back into the long-term stable toe slope, in which the TRCA will not be supportive of. So if you would like, I can discuss the possibility of a deferral with my client right now. However, I don't think there is much to resolve. And we did take into consideration the neighbors' concerns prior to the hearing date. They did submit these letters. And we did, although it was on the submission prior to we did consult with the neighbors prior to this material submission deadline. So it was not like we did not consult with them at all, and it's not like we consulted with them a day before the hearing as well. This was 10 days prior to the hearing date. So if you would like, I can give my client a call right now and discuss the possibility of a deferral.
Yes, Yim?
Yes, just wait a minute. This deferral suggestion is very new, and then I'm not too sure that I am in support of even considering it, because I think that we have a proposal in front of us. In the light of what the oppositions are, the point that they're raising, it's nothing that they can really change drastically. And I think that I rather prefer to put it through a vote to see.
Yeah, okay. I agree with Yim. I think there might be some tweaking that they can do, but essentially the variances that we're being asked to consider and vote on, I don't think are anything, are things that they can really change. They certainly can't change the front yard setback, and they can't change the back by anything of any significance, or otherwise they're going to be left with an undevelopable lot. So I would think that we should proceed, and perhaps the applicant can have discussions with the neighbors and see if there's some tweaking he can do even after we consider the application. All right, so
I would, Chair, I'd pipe in. I'd agree. I like Carl. I thought about Earl when I first saw this, and heard that there weren't discussions with the neighbors. But through the discussion today, I think I'm like Knives. I'm kind of convinced that there wouldn't be an opportunity for any kind of dramatic change to the extent that I think particularly the adjoining neighbors would hope for. I wonder, not to get ahead of ourselves, but if we were to approve this, one could put a condition in there, and whether it's doable or not, but that the applicant have a dialogue with the neighbors and look for opportunities for, as you call them, to mitigate any kind of concern. I know that's not always the thing to do, but I think in this case it might be a bad condition.
I could support that.
I didn't
Well,
hear
but-
what you said, Larry, because you sort of fade in and out a little bit.
Well, that's my nature, Chair. I was saying a bunch of things, but what I was suggesting as an outcome may be that if we vote on it, if it were to be approved, that we attach condition that the applicant enter some sort of discussions with the adjacent neighbors to see whether there's opportunities for design features that might actually mitigate some of their concerns. I guess that that's sometimes a bit of a moot point, but in this case, it might actually lead to some, minor alterations that at least mitigate some of those concerns.
Yes, Yim. We can't hear you,
Okay.
Yim.
I agree with both of Carl and Larry on that, except that I have a question. Are we allowed to put conditions on the process? This is part of the process that how they approach their neighbors and community. We always encourage it. We always do, and that's the whole point of community adjustment. But I'm not too sure we can put a condition as if we can regulate the process, how the community interact. I don't know. This is
I
only
agree.
a question.
Agreed. So maybe I can modify that a little bit. That the condition is that the applicant is encouraged to have discussions with the neighbors. I take your point. We don't want to get into a regulatory world where we either don't have thing or it's unenforceable, that sort of stuff. But I think in this instance, there may be an opportunity, and I suspect there may be some willingness on the part of the applicant and the owner to do that.
Yes.
I think with our encouragement, perhaps that could happen.
Well,
What I
So
then
what-
we should, sorry, Larry. Maybe what I should like to suggest is that we put it as a recommendation, and that we will encourage them to approach the neighbors rather than as a condition.
Well,
Yeah,
I,
sure.
I
I'm happy with that.
think,
Why don't we get this ball moving, and I'll make a motion, if that's okay?
yes, go ahead.
Once I make a motion, I'm gonna move that the application be approved. Is subject to forestry conditions 1, 2, and 3, and also the condition / recommendation that the applicant is encouraged to have discussions with his neighbors to see if there are any opportunities for redesign that might actually address some of their concerns. Chair, I'd also just ask for your advice a little bit before we vote on that. I still am a little bit unconvinced of that third story, and I would like to also put a condition in that the third story attic is not be habitable,
All right. So,
if that's okay with you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. I like the condition of the attic space, yeah.
okay, you're seconding the
I'm
motion?
happy to second that motion.
Pardon?
I'm happy to second that motion.
Okay. If I can suggest a friendly amendment that we take out the word condition, Larry, and just leave in recommendation. The Deputy Secretary Treasurer is shaking her head at my suggestion. So I think that.
Which way, Carl, or which way, Chair?
Oh,
Taking
she's
this way or that?
saying, yes, take out the word condition.
All right, condition for the third story, still use the word
Yes,
condition.
that's different. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it's the recommendation about encouragement to talk to the neighbors is just a recommendation and not a condition. Okay, are you comfortable with that, Carl?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. My computer went kaflooey. Okay. Well, this morning they would have had the whole list finished by now. Number 2, 659 Northcliff Boulevard. Purpose of the application to alter the existing 9-story apartment building, 54 residential units by performing interior alterations to the second story to create a new service hub. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. Yeah, Samuel Vander Sluis.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Samuel Vandersloos. I'm an intern architect at Brown & Story Architects. Our address is 80 Richmond Street West. We are submitting this application on behalf of our client,
Sir,
Toronto
could you
Community
speak
Housing
in, could you speak into the microphone? We're having trouble hearing you now.
Oh, sorry about that. Is that better?
That's better.
We are submitting this application on behalf of our client, Toronto Community Housing Corporation, for your review of the minor variance relief in order to provide a new service hub. So the service hub is part of an important Toronto community housing program that decentralizes tenant services. So currently, Toronto Community Housing has a centralized system of addressing resident concerns, and their idea is to decentralize their support services by placing service hubs within over 100 existing Toronto community housing buildings throughout the city. And the building in, or the location of our proposed service hub that we'll be talking about today is 659 Northcliff. So this is a 550 square meter building. It's 8 stories tall with a penthouse, and the scope of our work is proposed for the ground and second floor. So if we could briefly look at the existing second floor plan, that's sheet A102. So our proposed service hub is proposed for this recreation room in the corner of the building, which is identified on that plan. So what's important to note here is that, as you can see from this plan, this recreation room is it's not very visible to the rest of the building. It's sort of secluded in the corner of this building, and it hasn't been used for the past 6 years. It's being closed to the public. It's locked down and is there's nothing happening inside of it. So if we could quickly move to our proposed plans, A201. So this is showing the ground floor of the building. As part of our work, we're proposing a universal washroom on the ground floor to serve the tenants and staff, as well as a tenant lunchroom and kitchen to serve the TCHC staff that are intended to work at this building. And if we look at the next sheet, A202, so this is showing the office itself. So what's important to note here is that these service hubs are intended to provide a valuable service to TCHC residents. They currently have limited access to TCHC staff, and by decentralizing the offices and providing them with support inside of their own buildings, they are getting better access to the support they need, any support that is related to their tenancy. So these service hubs provide a waiting room, a meeting room, and a reception area. So anyone who is served by these service hubs can walk in and talk to TCHC staff. And they also have offices and workstations so that the superintendent and other TCHC staff can work here permanently. So with respect to the variance, the section 10.1 York zoning bylaw 1-83 requires that a building containing 20 or more dwelling units, this building contains 54, must be provided with 2 square meters of residential amenity space for each unit. Now this area which we are taking up on the second floor, or what that we are proposing to take up, is 79 meters squared. This building requires 108 meters squared of amenity space. But what's also important to note, as I said earlier, is this amenity space is not currently being used. It is closed because of what is called antisocial tenant behavior, and there have been several serious incidents in the past, which is why the space is closed and not intended to be reopened as an amenity space. Yeah, this is taking up 79 meters squared, and
Mr. Vandersloot, I think we understand what's happening here. I just have one question about the service hub. Seems to me the service hub would be more useful to the residents than a recreation area.
Yes, the service hub would be a very important amenity for the residents.
Okay, so it's, I mean, you call it a service hub, it could just as easily call it an amenity too.
Yeah, it's
May not fit the definition in the bylaw.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it may not fit the definition in a bylaw, but it's certainly an amenity.
We would consider it an amenity, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let me take it to committee. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have the same question. I think this is a commendable application. I have no trouble supporting it. But like you, I wondered whether they even needed the variance. It strikes me that the service hub on the second floor and the facilities being proposed on the first floor are in fact amenities. They're usable amenities, and unlike a locked party room that's perhaps never used. You've been advised that you need a variance for this, have you? That this doesn't qualify as an amenity?
Yes, that's correct. We received a notice from the city saying that we are in contravention of this bylaw.
Yeah, there's specific definition what amenity spaces for residential buildings. Very different from what you think.
Yeah, I would think so. So, it
Well,
doesn't
Mr.
fit.
Chairman, if no one has any difficulties with this, I think it's a very straightforward application, and it's commendable. It's a good idea. I'd like to see it happen more often. And unless other people have questions, I'd like to move approval of this application without condition.
Seconder, Yim, all in favor? Yim, put up your hand, Yim. Yeah, okay. You have your approval, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now move to number, just a minute, let me clean up my list here. Number 5, 109 Craven Road. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling by constructing a 3-story side addition, a complete 3rd-story addition, a rear deck, a 3rd-story front balcony, a 2nd and a 3rd-story rear balcony, and to add a secondary suite. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a report from planning, and opposition from 111 and 107 Craven Road. Mr. Mastrandrea.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Leo Mastrandrea. I'm the agent for the owners at 109 Craven. And we're here today for 8 variances. We revised our drawings and the application to address community planning concerns, which planning now supports our application, and then we agreed to their report, which states to add screening on our rear balconies. And I'd like to speak towards the variances. So variance number 1 is basically an existing condition, and variance number 2 and 3 is more of a technical variance because our rear yard does not comply, but our rear yard is also existing condition. And it's because Craven is a unique situation because the lots on Craven are only 70 feet deep, and the other unique situation is that it's the front of Craven faces the rear yard of Ashdale. Variance number 4, if you could pull up page 1 of my supporting material. And this shows that our height is consistent with what's been approved in the area. Page number 1 of our supporting material. It shows the map of the height, exterior main wall.
Through Mr. Chair, I don't see it in the package. Was it submitted?
It's on it's in on AIC.
Do you remember when it was submitted? Approximately.
It's if you look on the application information center, it was it says that when it was received. I just looked at it. It's in there.
It's not indexed in our package, so I'm not sure where it is.
Can you pull up AIC? Because it is there. I was just looking at it. The supporting material.
No, it's not.
Okay, well, nevertheless, the I can state what's on that. I have a map of the area showing in the immediate area. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 decisions that were approved beyond what we were asking for. 25 Craven was approved at 10.72 meters, and also if we look at the FSI, also 25 Craven was for variance number 5. 25 Craven was approved at 1.39, and yes, this supporting material. If you pull up page 1 of this, page number 1.
Oh, you found it?
There was two packages.
Yeah, we're bringing that up. Just give us 1 second.
Is it coming up?
Yes, correct. So there's our height for exterior main wall. So you can see that surrounding our application at 25 was approved at 10.72, and there are another 5 or 6 that have also been approved above what we're asking. If you go to the next page, on page number 2, that's our floor space index page, where you can see that 25 Craven was approved at 1.39, and 783 was approved at 1.58. And it is because the lots, again, are only 70 feet deep. As far as variance number 6 and 7 is from existing conditions, and variance number 8, I believe, is a technical issue and is also minor in nature. I feel that this application does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and if you have any questions, we can answer them for you.
Panel, any questions? Okay. Let's move to Crystal Penner and Calvin Dick.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairperson and committee. Both Calvin Dick and I had responded to this meeting in support of the immediate neighbors to 109 Craven
Could you
Road.
give us your address, please?
Yes, 63 Craven Road.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Yes. We noted a few things. The lots indeed are not very deep on Craven Road. But in speaking to our neighbors, the concerns were of privacy and also lack of sunlight because of the increase to the backyard, the square footage there. Also, we noted that while legally the house is listed as a single family home, and this permit is to add a secondary suite. Most recent real estate listings have listed it as a multi-unit home, and having walked through it when it was last for sale, there were 3 units existing in the home. So the question is this now being made a 4-plex instead of a single family home with a secondary suite? Because the density on the street is already quite impactful for things like parking permits and space, so that is a concern. And yeah, we are in support of the neighbors' concern about encroachment on the zoning and the sunlight and privacy when the house is so tall beside the house. That is all from us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Matthew Asselin?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can we have your name and
Hi.
address, please?
Name is Matthew Asplin. I am the neighbor immediately to the north, 111 Craven. Thank you for the time today to speak. There were a few comments. I mirror what the last participant mentioned. So our concerns are around the additional height and the privacy in the backyard. So as the applicant mentioned, the lots are very short, and so therefore our backyards are very small. And we have a concern that we are going to have less daylight in the backyard. We have requested from the applicant a shadow or a sun study. However, that was not provided or commented on. We've also asked the applicant if they would consider moving the balconies on the second and third story to the front of the house. I believe they have one already on the plan for the front of the house to help with the privacy. As was mentioned, Craven is a unique road, and so you would be facing trees rather than facing our backyards. And lastly, as a previous participant mentioned, Craven Road is unique and already very, very full of cars. We're concerned that with the applicant's floor plan, which shows 7 bedrooms, and the confusion around whether it's going to be just for a single family, 2 families, or if it's going to be a 4-plex, we're concerned that they are currently going to be removing their driveway, and that those additional the total of 7 bedrooms are going to put a significant stress on the parking in the area. In full discretion, the applicant did come by our house maybe a week before the application was due. I had not seen the variances at the time though, so it was difficult to comment, and the participant did not share what the variances were. The applicant did comment on the value of their property going up, and that we should be thankful for our property also. I followed up with an email to the applicant with our 3 concerns that we've shared here. I did not receive any comment on those until 4 o'clock the day that the comments were due, which were due at 4:30, and I had already submitted earlier in that day. The comments that I did receive that evening at 4 o'clock addressed the balconies, but did not agree with our comment, and did not comment on the other 2 concerns that we have. So without further discussion with the applicant on possible solutions, we're kind of forced into this decision of having to object to these variants. And I've listed what they are specifically in terms of the items in our PDF. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, panel? Scott Marylees?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Scott Marylees was not in the hearing when we started, and he didn't respond to calls to join the hearing.
Okay. Mr. Mastandrea?
Yes. So to address the first concerns, so there are currently 3 units in the building, but we are creating only 2 units when this is completed. And if I could turn your attention to page number 23 of my supporting material. Yes, so this is 2025 Craven, and as you can see, there is no parking. It's a very tight space. And what we're proposing is actually very similar to what's been approved at 25 and what you can see on the screen. In addition, if you go down to the next page, you'll also see other 3 stories in the area that are also similar to what we're proposing and consistent with what's been approved here at the committee of adjustment. If you can go to the next page, on page 25 as well, there's a similar building and structure that we're proposing, as well as the next page on 26 is also a 3-story consistent with what we are proposing. We did make changes with the planning department. We reduced our second and third floors to minimize the impact on the neighbors. We set back our front and our rear second, and then again on the third to address the concerns. In addition, the sun comes up in the east and goes down in the west, and our front faces west. So I don't feel that the proposal will affect the sunlight any more than it is currently. And as well, as far as the height is concerned, we are permitted 10 meters in height if it was a sloped roof. The only reason we have the variance of the 7.5 is because it's a flat roof. And if you can turn back to page number 1 of my submission, there's consistent heights or flat roofs that are way above what we're asking for. Number 25 got approved for 10.72, and we are only asking for 9.7. That's a meter less than what they were approved for. And because we dealt with planning, I believe we addressed their concerns and they support our application. And we are willing to put the screening on the rear balconies for privacy.
Panel, any questions? Okay, let's take it into committee. Any discussion?
I'm happy, Chair, to start, or my colleagues will chip in. I think first read this application, I was mostly concerned about the FSI increase. It's a fairly substantial increase allowed, but I listened to the presentation from Jen, and I think I understand the size of the lot strength a little bit better. Craven is a very eclectic street, and just by looking at it, it has ranges from small one-story cottages right up to almost 3.5-story homes in a very desirable neighborhood. I don't think this application is out of line with the type of applications we see in these kinds of neighborhoods. It is, like, I don't think there's a character issue at all. And it doesn't, the other side, there's no residences on that side too, contributes to unique nature. So I think this is a supportable application subject to planning staff conditions for screening.
Yes, Carl?
I agree with Larry. This is a very interesting street, but there is no dominant building form, building type. There's a variety. It's very, as Larry says, very eclectic. I don't see anything about the current application that's out of line or out of character with the street or the area, and I have no difficulty supporting it. I'm also impressed with the fact that the applicant engaged in discussions with the planning department and made changes to the building in response to their comments about setting the second and third floors back to reduce the impact a bit. Subject to planning department's condition, I think that is very supportable.
So, do we have a motion?
How about if I move a
Larry?
motion, Carl, eh?
Yep, sure.
Sure, I'll then move a motion to approve this application subject to planning staff conditions to set the screening on the second and third rear balconies.
Second that.
So, Carl seconded, all in favor? You have your approval, sir, thank you. Number 6. 108 Havelock Street. And the purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling by constructing a 3-story front addition, a 3-story rear addition, a complete 3rd-story addition, a front and a rear 3rd-story balcony, a front porch, a rear deck, a front and a rear basement walkout, and a secondary suite in the basement. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence from planning, and reports from planning and urban forestry. We have have support from 263 Rusholme Road, 9B Sylvan Avenue, 47 Havelock, and 106 Havelock, and a form letter in support from the occupants of 67 Havelock.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's also supplementary materials, including, yeah, a bunch of
Right.
revisions.
Okay, so we also have further material submitted by the applicant, including letters sent to neighbors, and revised plans, context map, presentation materials, correspondence in support from 106 Havelock, and a form letter in support from 67 Havelock.
And through you, Mr. Chair, we have received very late materials as of yesterday afternoon, photos of comparables, revised zoning notice, as well as a letter from Councillor Bailao with no concern to the recent revisions.
Okay, so. there's
Mr.
also-
Chairman?
Yes?
A question I have before anybody makes a presentation was that in the added material, there's a lot of added material. And there have been revisions made in response to the planning department report that we have on file. Do we have a subsequent report from planning on their response to the revisions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we don't.
Thank you.
Okay.
But we
so-
would request the applicant to go through all of the revisions for public record.
Okay, Angela Blanes.
Yes, present.
All right, can we just have your name and your address for the record, please?
Angela Blanes, 158 Northcliff Boulevard, Toronto.
Okay, so could you, we understand there've been some revisions to the variances. Could you go through them one by one with us so we understand what you're asking for?
Yes, of course. We can start with variance number 6, the floor
No,
space
why don't-
index.
why don't-
Chairman, I'm
Hello?
so sorry, I have to interrupt. I'm so sorry, because I did not know Angela is going to be the agent. She's a friend of mine. I have to declare conflict of interest for this case.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know that, yeah, just now.
All right, so, Ms. Blanes, would you start with number 1 and tell us each one whether there's a change or there isn't a change?
Oh, okay, I was gonna tell you the changes, but I'll start with number 1. Okay, here we go. Okay, number 1, the minimum required
No,
front
we
yard
know,
setback.
we can read what it is. Just tell us yes or no, there's a change.
Yes, there is a change.
Right.
The required is 1.76. The previous proposed was 0, and now we're proposing 0.254 from the front step.
Okay,
Number 2, there is no change. This is a side yard setback, and the proposed is 0.2 meters. It's just the walls that are being
Alright.
continued straight up for the
Alright,
addition
just-
on the 3rd floor.
all right.
So the 3rd floor, the number 3, there is no change to the required side yard setback. Number 4, the maximum there is no change to the height. Number 6,
So
number 5
is no change as well?
change. Number 6, there is a change to number 6. It's the floor space index reduced. The required is 0.6. The existing is 0.64. And what we're proposing now is 1.33, reduced from 1.56. So therefore, we're only asking additional of 0.69 FSI from the existing 0.64.
Can we
And
have,
what we should know about this variance
all right,
is
can,
that the,
Ms.
it was
Banis,
yes?
can we have we need the area of the lot to change from 1.56 times to 1.33 times. We need to know what the square meters are.
239.99 meters squared.
Okay, thank you.
And it was previously approved for 0.83 times of the lot. So it was 149.14 that was previously approved by Committee of Adjustment.
All right.
So we're only asking for a 0.50 FSI greater than what was previously approved.
All right. So number
Now,
variance
proceeding
7.
with the variances. Sorry?
Are there any other changes to the variances?
Yes, there are. Variance number 7, no. Variance number 8, yes, there is a change to the required front yard landscape open space. It was stepped back at 0.25, so the proposed change is 0.62 meters squared of front yard landscaping. That's number 8. Number 9, yes, there was a change. We added landscaping to the rear
Excuse me,
yard.
on number 8, can you give the percentage as well? I'm getting lost here. What are you asking for in number 8?
Number 8, we are asking for 0.62 meters squared. Sorry, I don't have the percentage in front of me.
Okay, we need to have that.
Okay, I can actually,
I agree, Carl, need the percentage as well.
okay, because the zoning examiner submitted the revised zoning as well. Do you have the revised zoning in front of you? Sorry. So, let me see if it's the same number for the percentage. Number 8.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's showing that it's 12% of the required front yard landscaping, which equates to 0.62 square meters.
Okay, let's go move on to number 9, please.
Okay, number 9, the rear yard, landscaping, the required is 30.23, and we're proposing 17 meters squared to the rear yard.
And the percentage?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that equates to 28% of the rear yard.
Thank you.
Okay, and further to that, we have, and we've done the front yard step. That seems to be the changes that we have accommodated for the planning, and we've addressed all of their comments. Unfortunately, number 5, to tear down the garage, which was approved at a previous committee, it is not an option to tear down. So every other comment that planning has made, we've addressed. I can go through that as well if you like.
What?
Yeah, I'd like to hear that in part because, the planning report specifically makes that recommendation, and I suspect part of that recommendation is in relation to the rear yard landscaping deficit. So I'm curious of what the story is with the garage.
Yes, they were asking to the removal of the garage to create larger soft landscaping, but currently, if you look on the street massing where there is photos there is no soft soft landscaping existing. It's all paved. So we're actually improving of what is existing, from 0 to 17 meters squared, we're adding. And we've taken away further the deck that was there. So taking away the deck also allows for more landscaping, and that satisfies their landscaping. They had also requested to take away stairs and deck above the garage. We did that previously. And
If I might though, the concern that I have is when you make revisions after we go to agenda and we've got people lined up in opposition, I gather, who want to speak, we need to make sure that they understand what the proposal is that's before us and make sure that what was advertised is reasonably close to what we have before us. One of the changes that I noticed is in stepping back the top floor of the building, you created, I believe, a substantial roof deck, which introduces some privacy issues that weren't there before.
This was one of the recommendations that we step it back in reference to our neighbors and also.
Yeah, but they didn't recommend that you create a roof deck, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad, but the roof deck does introduce privacy issues that weren't there before.
We've canvassed the area. No one had any issues about the decking.
You see, here, I'm sorry, but I'm not speaking against the application, but I'm concerned with the process. You canvassed the area, but we don't know who you talked to, and we don't know if there are people that saw your original plans that would now be concerned with that deck. Because what was circulated wasn't what we have before us today. And the issue for me is whether there's been sufficient circulation and publication of the revised proposal for us to deal with this. That's my major concern with this application.
Right, and I understand that. So in stepping back further, if you see the home just right next to it with the joining driveway, they are stepped back considerably too with their decking. And
We're having trouble hearing you. You have to speak into the microphone, please.
okay, sorry about that. So the home just adjacent that is sharing the driveway next to the home, they are stepped just as far back, and there was no concern there, as well as the other neighbors at 106, which is their parents. They're further stepped back too. So it's a.
I'm not sure the agent's answering Carl's question, and I suspect maybe what we should, when we get to hear from those online who want to speak to it, we'll be able to tell them about their understanding of the new proposal.
There's nobody online, Larry.
Oh, well, there you go. So can we take that the opposition has been satisfied?
Well, I guess. But, you know, if you can still raise legitimate issues.
Okay.
Here's the concern
Sorry,
that I have.
sorry for interrupting.
The concern that I have is, did everyone that would comment on the revised proposal understand what the revisions are that we have before us? And I don't know the answer to that. The second thing is that the planning department's report, which is what we have from planning, is very damning. It says that this application doesn't comply with the official plan or the bylaw intent, and that it is a case of overbuilding. I don't know, and I'm reluctant to guess whether these revisions that you've made would cause the planning department to change that recommendation, because I take the planning department recommendation on this application very seriously. That's a very serious negative comment. I don't know how we can determine whether the revisions, which to me look very minor, whether those revisions are sufficient to have addressed the planning department's concerns. I actually don't know how we can actually deal with this revised proposal today.
The rear of the house is actually, there's a large park right there, which is beside Dufferin Mall there. So it's all parkland in the back. So there's not much of privacy to be considered as well from the back, looking towards the park. A lot of the homes are stepped right back in with balconies and smaller properties. It is a downtown core, as there's a lot of fast building and tall and towering, and you can see that in the mass of all the towering streetscapes in front and beside of what we would be proposing. So they're still towering over what is being proposed.
All right, but the staff report still talks about overdevelopment, and Carl has addressed the issue that all the revisions that you made seem to be relatively minor, and we don't have a revised report from planning, so we don't know whether they would consider this still overdevelopment. All right, in any event, we're going to take it into committee now. Larry, do you have any comments?
I was just wondering, I thought someone had mentioned that the counselor had written on this case, and I'm struggling, I didn't see it, and struggling to find the letter. I wonder if someone might be able to help me. Is there a letter from the counselor on this application available for a
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're just going to put it up on the screen now. It did come in yesterday evening.
Okay. And anyone want to paraphrase what it said?
It was up on there it is.
Yeah, so it's on the screen. So more or less, the counselor is aware that there were issues around the proposal, that there have been revisions made, and that it's quoted here, believe overall that this is a positive change for the neighborhood, and I support these efforts.
So Larry, I just wanted to point out to you that we were advised the other day, and we were advised last year, I think when we first started our first meeting, that counselors have a conflict of interest and should not be commenting on these applications either favorably or otherwise, except to provide information. And so I don't think we can pay much attention to the support from this counselor.
No, and I agree with you, Chair, 100%. I was just, she makes reference to, in her letter, that there were discussions planning stuff. That's what I was trying to get at, whether we draw any conclusions about the planning staff view on this application.
Continue down, Larry, continue down. She does say that. She says there are several supportive letters on file. However, I also recognize that planning staff still have concerns. And I have noticed that the supplementary material has been submitted and there is a willingness to make further changes. So it sounds as though the planning department's position has not been completely addressed, and that was the issue that I have. I'm uncomfortable with this application.
It is a little unusual to have this nature and scope of change on this kind of application. I wonder, I'll just put that I don't like deferring applications because it creates backlog and slows the project down, but I wonder in this case, a deferral to allow planning staff to comment on the revised proposal might be helpful.
I would support that.
Okay, make a motion, Larry.
I make a motion to defer this application and subject to receiving an updated report from city planning staff on this application.
You second that, Carl? All right. All
Yes,
in
I do.
favor? All in favor of the deferral motion? You have a deferral, Ms. Blanes, thank you. Number 7. '82 Kenneth Avenue. Purpose of the application to alter the existing 2.5-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a rear 1-story addition and to construct a rear 2-story ancillary building at the rear of the altered semi-detached dwelling. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have correspondence from planning and 6 form letters in support. Mr. Dom?
Hi.
Can we have your name and your address for the record, please?
Yes. Hi, my name is Joe Dome, 1101 Steeles Avenue West, agent for the applicant.
Okay. I don't think we need a presentation on this panel. Do you have any questions? Yes, Yim?
Yeah, I have one question. Corresponding with the planning department, it mentioned that the auxiliary building, the 2nd floor is being deleted. Is it true? Is it right? Or if that's the case, do we have to amend the purpose clause to take the 2-story auxiliary building off?
Yeah, that's right. Conversations were had with planning, and in accordance with their recommendations, the revised plans reworked the interior mezzanine storage height, and the interior garage height was increased to 3.25 meters while shortening the mezzanine storage height above it to 1.52 meters before you today, and that eliminated that 2nd story description.
So it's a 1-story ancillary building?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
And I have one question as well. It's a very minor one. I noticed in the supporting letters, there is nothing from number 80, which is the attached semi. Did I miss that, or can you speak to whether that landowner is in support?
Yeah, I'm not aware if the owner is in support, but the owner of 82 has spoken, as you can see here, with and gotten form letters for 6 neighbors, and yeah, it's well in line with the existing built form on the laneway.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Any comments? Do we have a motion? Yes, Yim?
Okay, well, just with the earlier comment I made, other than that, I do not have any problem supporting this application, and I think they will fit into the immediate context, and I move for approval and with no condition except amend the purpose clause.
All right. We have a seconder?
Do you
Carl?
need variance 2 now? Is the variance 2 eliminated?
It still is there, except that it's not going to be 2-story. I think it's been lower already from the previous suggestion proposal.
Okay. All right. I thought I heard him say he was adjusting it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, Carl, you seconded the motion?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 8, 89 Wright Avenue. The purpose of this application is to construct a 3rd-story addition, rear 1st floor deck, rear 3rd floor deck, a side basement walkout, new front stairs, and a canopy. Also to make interior alterations to create a secondary suite within the basement with the primary dwelling unit located on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor. With this application, we have materials submitted by the applicant, and we have 10 form letters in support. Tomislav Nezik.
Tomislav Nezik, you've been unmuted. '89 Wright Avenue, Tomislav Nezik. Are you there? I see you're trying to unmute yourself. I've unmuted you. You should be able to talk now.
Hello, this is Tom Knezich of 89 Wright. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great, thank you.
Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any opposition. So panel, do you have any questions? Yes, Carl?
Mine isn't a question, Mr. Chairman. I was about to make a motion, unless my colleagues have any questions.
Okay, go ahead, Carl.
Before making the motion, I'd just like to compliment the applicant for a very thorough and excellent submission. This was very easy to understand because of all the information that was provided, and I very much appreciate that. I think that this is an excellent submission. The proposal reflects the neighboring character. I don't see any negative impacts to the proposal as submitted, and I'd like to move approval. And the only condition I'd like to suggest is that it be tied to plans, that development be in accordance with the submitted plans. And my reason for that is that the strength of the proposal lies in the way in which the designer has, in fact, masked the building and related it to existing context.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Larry, all in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Number 9, 282 Riverside Drive, and the purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling by constructing a rear attached garage at the basement level with a ground floor rear deck above and 1-story front addition. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from a ravine and natural feature protection, reports from planning, reports from Toronto and Region Conservation Authority and from Urban Forestry, and opposition from 284 Riverside Drive. Mr. Trotter.
Yes, Andrew Trotter, 81 St. Clair's Avenue.
Okay, Mr. Trotter, I just want to ask the panel, do you have any questions on this matter, panel? Yes,
I was, just for clarification purposes, the variance that you're seeking for a 1-story addition and a rear attached to the deck, is that already constructed?
No, that hasn't been constructed. An existing deck was repaired years ago. There's no, the objection letter is grossly incorrect. That wood deck is to be torn down. There is no parking under there at the moment. There is an existing integral garage that they are parking in that is not, been any part of the variances whatsoever. It's been existing since the house was built. But no, there's no integral garage outside of the existing one. We're planning to add the second one, and yes, that will hopefully come to be, yes.
That's great, thank you.
Yim?
Yes, the only variance that sticks out to me is the FSI. Is you're asking for almost double. Can you give me some kind of comparables and or justification for that, please?
Well, the FSI again is truncated by the top of stable bank. So we're actually only increasing the existing structure by about 10 square meters, just the front porch. We're not actually doubling the FSI. That's an existing situation. If the full size of the lot was not truncated by the Ravina Natural, or sorry, TRCA, we'd actually be at 32, even with the addition. So really all the houses, and I've shown in the presentation material, there's a site of, you know, the showing the red line of the street, and you can see the ravines marked on each side. So all of these houses on Riverside, a street that I grew up on, and I've actually known the client since I was young myself. He's a great guy. And all of these houses are truncated by this top of stable bank. So really all of these houses would be double the FSI. We're not even, I don't even, I don't think the garage is considered in the FSI, and I don't believe the deck is. And really the only thing that's enclosed is about 10 square meters of the front porch, which again is these truncated situations create these sort of narrow type buildings where, you know, the homeowners are really just trying to increase a little bit of closet space that's not going to, you know, come into the living space of the already these houses. They don't appear to be that narrow in this situation, but when you're in them, they're actually they're quite narrow, and the need for the closet space you would see is quite apparent, really. So yeah.
Thank you. I understand that. Thank you.
All right, do we,
Chair,
yes, Larry?
I'm happy to make a motion on this one. I think this is a really minor change to the existing dwelling. These are large homes, large lots, very attractive lots with the ravine view. And the explanation he gave us about the FSI and top of bank, we heard that here today. That seems to be a reasonable explanation for that. I think this is overall very minor and in keeping with the neighborhood, and I move approval, subject 4, 3, 1, and 2.
Yim, you second that motion? All in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Number 10, 445 Crawford Street. Purpose of the application is to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a first-story side addition with a front entrance, and to provide no additional parking for a secondary suite. In addition, a new front yard ancillary building is proposed. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have a report from Urban Forestry. We have support from 264 Montrose Avenue, opposition from 250 and 252 Montrose Avenue. In addition, we have supplementary material, a covering letter from the agent, opposition, correspondence in opposition from 252 Montrose.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I was hoping maybe we could pause on this application and come back to it in a short while. There's objectors who are here, but we're having trouble connecting at the moment, so we're hoping to go through two more to come back.
Yeah, but I think that this applicant is asking for a deferral.
Oh.
So let's just find out.
Okay.
There is a letter in the supplementary material seeking a deferral, Chair.
Yeah, I know, that's what I said. Mr. Latavsky?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we can. So are you, first of all, give us your name and your address, please, for the record.
My name is Adrian Latavsky, and my address is 235 Lakeshore Road East in Oakville.
Okay. Are you asking for a deferral, sir?
Yes, I am. A revised application was submitted on October 27th to planning staff after the public notice had gone out, the result of which is to actually remove the variance requesting no parking and to replace it with two variances that are aiming to recognize or maintain one parking space in the front yard, and it would be of a reduced size. So there would indeed be new variances that arise from this change, and we expect that staff will want to review the application, and it's also quite possible that new public notice may be required. So we are asking deferral, sir.
Okay, so Jacob, do we have anybody opposition online?
We don't have any opposition online right now.
Why is that?
It seems that two of them did not show up, despite calls to answer, and one of them was here, but he had to leave briefly. He's asked that we come back to the item.
Okay, well, and we don't want to hold up everybody for this person who's...
Right.
Panel, Yim?
Yes, if there aren't any opposite comments, I think the applicant explained the reason why you require deferral, and I'm in support of that, and I move a motion for deferral.
We have a seconder, Carl. All in favor of deferral
Mr. Chairman,
motion?
could I, in seconding it, could I ask the applicant if the deferral is successful and the application comes back to us, could you give us some information as well on the ancillary building? There's no information on that.
Certainly, sir. It's essentially a storage building, one story. The variance that triggers it really has more to do with the shape of, actually, frankly, many of the variances are triggered by the unusual shape of the property. It's triangular shape as to whether or not it's in the front yard, and so that's what it boils down to.
It's just that its location is rather dominant. Yeah.
So why are we getting the...
Okay.
Okay. All right, so you made the motion. Carl,
Yes,
you
I still have the
seconded.
same motion.
All in favor of the deferral motion? Yim, put up your hand, Yim. Okay, it's the motion for deferral is successful. The application is deferred. Thank you, sir. Number 11, 583 College Street. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story mixed-use building containing one restaurant on the ground floor and one residential unit on the second floor by expanding, I assume that means expanding, and converting the basement and a portion of the ground floor into a dental clinic and installing a new cafe on the ground floor. The existing second floor residential unit will be maintained. With this application, we have materials submitted by the applicant. Yes, Mr. Horber?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. My name is Alex Horber. I'm with Bold Auto Design Architects for Clinton Place in Toronto, and we are acting on behalf of the owner of the property.
Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any opposition. Panel, do you have any questions? No questions? Okay, we'll take it into committee. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Horber, before we go into committee?
No, none really. I'm going to say that the volume and the use of this building will remain unchanged visibly from the outside. So any expansion of the floor area is happening below grade, and the building as it stands currently is not changing visibly and will not affect the streetscape.
All right, thank you. All right, panel, do you have, Yim?
Yes, I do have a motion, but if anyone wants to speak, I will listen to. I think it's a very straightforward application, and then it's just the extent more use of the same purpose. And the variances I consider to be quite minor given the location, and I move for approval with no conditions.
All right, Carl, you second the motion. All in favor?
Yep.
You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 12, 1640 Dufferin Street. Purpose of this application is to convert the existing single-family, two-story detached dwelling into a two-unit, three-story detached dwelling by constructing a rear two-story addition and a full third-story addition, a rear basement walkout, a rear ground floor deck, and rear second and third-story balconies. A new rear detached garage will also be constructed. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and support from 1642 and 1638 Dufferin Street. So,
yes, my name is Bruno Lopez from Maxell Engineering, and I'm the agent for the owner.
okay. So, Mr. Lopez, can we have your address, sir?
1649 Sinclair Avenue West.
Okay. Can we have a brief presentation because we have some opposition?
Yes. So, first of all, Mr. Chair and committee members, I would like to bring to your attention that through this, let's see, information that we have no comments or reports from staff. So transportation is aligned, planning is aligned, and forestry is aligned with our project. So the intent, bringing a little bit of history on this project. Currently, the house is actually vacant because there is work being done under a different permit, and the permit was to do underpinning. So the current owner is actually in some other home that he rented while this construction is being done. So in lieu of doing or taking another home or go buy a home somewhere else, he decided that because family of course is growing, and because of the nature of the current situation of requirement more units and so, and relatives that he has, he took the opportunity to do a better home, a bigger home, and create two units. So right now, as we all know, City of Toronto is pushing for the second units at no development fees. We try to comply as much as possible because the new garage wasn't existing, was just a parking pad. That was the requirement for a single family. Now that we're gonna have a two unit, we're providing a double garage. So speaking about the variances, the first one will require a 50% landscape on the rear yard. We did a lot of architectural and engineering gymnastics to get where we got, and literally we got as much as we could, because since we have a double car garage, we have to actually create access to the double car garage, and we minimize the impact as much as possible. So we are providing 23.9% out of the 50, and this is as much as we can do physically. In terms of variance number 2, where we can go up to 7.5 meters on the side on permitted exterior walls, we actually at 9.18, and the reason being, we try different scenarios where we start to actually work with the roof pitch. But the problem is that to comply with this height, we're gonna be caught on the overall height. So for the committee members to actually understand this project, we are within our length and we are within the height. So again, we try to maximize the space within a lot of constraints. So it takes us to number 3, where we have the FSI. So FSI, it's 0.96, where the area is 0.6. My personal opinion is that the FSI for this area is a little bit outdated, because if you look on the surroundings, if you go to number 1632, 1638, even 1644 and 48, these houses are actually, a few of them 3 stories. So the existing condition is already past the FSI in big numbers. Number 4, the roof eaves projection, it's pretty much an existing condition. So we're just gonna lift the roof from where it was going to the same position, but a few meters higher. And number 5, it's a secondary suite, because this is one of the bylaws that it's an interesting one, because the city wants people to do units, but it's like you do units, you don't touch the frontage. So since we are adding the third floor, we cannot comply with this one. So in a nutshell, these 5 variances, a couple of them are inevitable, and there is not much we can do about it. So if we try to comply with one of these, we're gonna create another one. So believe it or not, we did a few iterations. I think there were at least 3 resubmissions. We worked to the best of our ability to reduce it to the minimum footprint, to the minimum number of variances, and this is the best end product.
Right, thank you. Panel, any questions? Okay. Michael Gabuat and Sabina Sabinska.
Yes, hello?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Sabina Zabinska, my husband, Michael Gabuat, who is also present. We are the owners of 1642 Dufferin Street, which is the property directly beside 1640, and we share a very narrow driveway. So that is our letter, which we provided in front of you. I hope you had time to review that. I will summarize that here. So the proposal does show a 3rd-story extension with the rear balconies and paved driveway leading to a 12-foot detached double garage. The proposed height will tower over neighboring buildings and will be obstructing natural light, airflow, and reducing privacy to our property. Along with the 12-foot garage, our property will be looking onto brick walls, which greatly impedes on the enjoyment of our yard. We live in a busy street already and only have the use of the rear yard for a quiet and private enjoyment. With the rear of 1640 showing 3 3-story balconies, we have significant lack of privacy. Judging by the plans showing laundry on every floor, it is safe to assume that this will be treated as a triplex or a fourplex. This leads to a concern with the property maintenance and our use of shared driveway with the amount of tenants that will reside at 1640. Currently, the property is vacant, as was mentioned, and has an uncapped garbage-filled lawn and equally mess-filled backyard. I mean, construction debris, pipes, broken glass, fence that is no longer standing. I could go on. As a result, we have had neighbors approach us regarding 1640 and its state, and have had garbage thrown on our property as a result, which requires daily pickup. The owner shows a lack of respect to his neighbors, and we are concerned that with the multiple future tenants that will occupy 1640, the property maintenance will not be respected. For instance, the garbage location and the foul odor that comes from multiple bins. We also share a very narrow drive, which cannot support heavy traffic and multiple vehicles. With the location of the proposed rear garage, there can be damage caused to our garage based on its current location on our property and our home. This will be difficult to resolve if we have multiple families residing in 1640. Lastly, the lack of soft landscaping proposes issues with drainage and what can result in flooding. With yearly increase in rainfall we experience in the city, an increase in flooding, ignoring the use of soft landscaping only increases our chances of future problems. So, we are not opposed to renovations to help update these older homes, but in this case, it no longer looks like it will be a home. It looks like it will be a small apartment building. And we purchased this home February of this year. We took possession, and we purchased this home as a forever home, and we're not looking, we already have tenants on the right-hand side of us. We aren't looking to live next to a small apartment dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, panel? Mr. Lopez?
The application before you, it's actually, we are dealing with planning. I'm here to defend my client regarding design and planning. If there are issues with construction and garbage, I don't really want to get into this, but I would like to remind this next door neighbor that their garage is currently actually inside my client property. If you go to the site plan,
Right, so Mr. Lopez, we can't deal with garbage and we can't deal with properties over lot lines. That you have to deal through your lawyers or whatever. But we're
Absolutely,
here,
absolutely.
we're here to discuss the variances.
correct, correct. And coming to this, just to the point that, you know what, actually my client, if we discussing about good faith, again, this is the proof of good faith. But anyway, coming to the points, this house is not even near as long as the one adjacent to it. So if you look at 1638, it's longer to the front, it's longer to the back. We have a setback. We actually indented pretty much about a quarter of the house at the back. The balconies are compliant in number and in size. So all these questions here, I understand people, you know, they might be upset about construction and privacy, but this is the nature and there's not much we can do about it, which is trying to do a building that suits the client needs, and at the same time meets the 4 tests from the Planning Act, and I think we have done so.
All right, panel, any questions? Yes, Larry?
Thanks, Chair. I noticed from the site plan that in the rear yard, the site plan makes reference to proposed concrete driveway. Is that driveway that you're planning, is that constructed yet, or is that to be constructed?
Right now, no, it's to be constructed. It's to be constructed. Right now, there is a parking pad. And of course, when you want to have access to a garage, it's not the greatest. I probably understand where your question comes from. If we can do it out of gravel or so, but for snow cleaning purpose and again for the structure itself to be there for a few years, we design it out of concrete. It's not existing. It's to be done.
Then I wonder, to your point, I wonder if it'd be open to, if the panel were to approve this, where that could be constructed out of permeable pavers or some permeable material.
I have no concerns with that. I'll highly recommend the homeowner to. It's an option, yes. It's not as strong as we know, because permeable pavers, if not correctly installed, which is beyond the point, but they might pose a problem with rutting and so. But I can take that on, yes.
Okay.
Any further questions? Comments? Do we have a motion?
If I may, just one final comment, because if we're gonna go and propose this to be impermeable pavers, I would recommend, if I may, to not do entirely out of pavers, but do a percentage, I would say, up to the house to do it in concrete, and from the house to the garage in permeable pavers. The reason I'm saying this is because adjacent to the neighbor's garage, and so we would like to have it as solid as possible.
Well, what percentage are you proposing, Mr. Lopez?
I would say up to the depth of the house. We'll do it in solid concrete or asphalt, so it's solid. And from the rear of the house to the garage, yes, we can do it in pavers if that would be a feasible alternative that the committee will be engaged on.
Do we have a percentage, or do you have a description we can incorporate into a condition?
I would say in terms of percentage, no, because again, it will be hard for me to quickly do numbers, but I'll do location, yes. Permeable pavers from the rear of the building to the front of the garage.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yim?
I think maybe we can say between the back wall of the main house to the garage will be permeable pavers.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Did you want to make a motion, Yim?
Yes. Yeah, we want to add that condition, and I will be in support of that too. I'm looking. Are we in committee?
Go ahead. You can make a motion if you like.
Oh, okay. It's about time I should make one. Okay. Okay. So the variances, and then unfortunately, the neighbors' oppositions, we really not, some of the issues are not in our mandate, and the construction issues and encroachment. And I just want to remind one of the oppositions that they are allowed to have a secondary suite here, and that's not part of the variance. So I will move for approval subject to the driveway between the main house and the garage wall will be permeable pavement, will be used permeable pavement.
All right, we have a seconder, Larry, all in favor of the motion? You're opposed, Carl, all opposed?
No, I'm in favor. I was just trying to determine whether there's a privacy issue with the balconies at the back, but it appears that they're actually behind the extensions of the walls on either side. So no, I'm fine with approval.
Okay, you have your approval, sir, thank you. Number 13, 672 Beresford Avenue. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a rear three-story addition, a full third-story addition, a rear ground floor deck, and a rear third-story balcony. With this application, yes, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence and support from 670 and 674 Beresford. Mr. Domingos.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. This is Ben Domingos here, representing the owners of 672 Beresford. My address is 133 Evans Avenue.
Okay, panel, do you have any questions of Mr. Domingos? Okay, before we take it into committee, Mr. Domingos, do you have anything to say, you want to say?
No, I think this is fairly straightforward.
Thank you. Okay, panel, do we have comments? Do we have a motion? Yes, Carl?
Mr. Chairman, I think that the addition could be quite jarring, and I think that the applicant has gone to some pains to try and alleviate that by roof forms, working with different roof forms, and he's managed to secure the support of both neighbors, including the attached semi, and on that basis, I don't have difficulty with the application. I would move approval of it, but I would like to suggest that the development be tied to plans, because I do believe in this case the success of the proposal is dependent on the way in which the building is massed.
Okay, we have a seconder. Yes, Larry.
Is it to all the plans or just the site plan?
I think it's easier to do it to all the plans. I don't think there's, it's basically the whole third floor and it's well done, but I would like to tie it to plans.
Okay.
All right, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 14. Albemarle Avenue. Purpose of the application to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a third-story addition, third-story front and rear balcony, second-story and third-story front bay windows, a second-story front balcony, a basement rear deck, and to extend the ground floor rear balcony. A detached garage will also be constructed in the rear yard. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, reports from urban forestry, ravine and natural feature protection, planning, and we have correspondence and support from 22 and 31 Albemarle, and 9 form letters in support from owners on Albemarle. Miss McDougall?
Good afternoon. I'm Cynthia McDougall.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia McDougall at McCarthy Tetro. I have an application here in Riverdale for a sensitively designed house with a real pitch roof with Riverdale proportions. As you indicated, there are 11 letters of support from the neighbors, including and most importantly, the 2 abutting neighbors. My client who lives in the house and has been in the neighborhood for 12 years knocked on doors throughout the summer and visited all of the residents. She's also consulted with city planning staff and forestry. We're in support of the 2 conditions. And I note the planning condition refers to a 1.5 privacy screen with respect to the rear platforms at the east end. Those privacy screens are actually already shown on the plan, so we're totally happy. I can review the variances and I hope you had an opportunity to review the package, and I would suggest and recommend that you support the application and it meets the 4 tests.
Okay. Panel, do you have any questions? Nope. Yes, Carl?
I must have missed it, but did you, I noted that there wasn't a letter of support from number 15. That must be incorrect. Did you, somewhere in that package, there's one from 15 as well?
Yes, there is.
Okay, I'm there it is. Okay, I just saw it. Okay, thank you. That's great.
Okay, Ms. McDougall, just one question. What's McCarthy Tetro's address?
55 King Street West.
Okay, thank you. All right, panel, do you have comments, Carl?
Mr. Chairman, this is another application that I'd like to compliment the applicant on. It's very comprehensive, easy to understand. All the information is there that we need to make evaluations and decisions, and I very much appreciate that. If my other colleagues do not have concerns or questions, I'd like to move approval of the application subject to forestry number 2 and the planning department condition, which, as the applicant has said, is already incorporated in the plans. I think this is a commendable application. It fits in well with the existing fabric in the community, and I think will be an asset to the city.
I'm happy to second that, Chair, and I'd actually echo Carl's comments on this application. This was an outstanding package of presentation material. It was well detailed, great graphics, and the homeowner and the agent have done a remarkable job of consulting with the neighbors, and the architectural design is really well done and in keeping with the Riverdale kind of character. So I second this, but also wanted to echo Carl's commendation of this application.
Good. We have a motion.
Carl made a motion.
I moved the motion, sorry. Approval subject to forestry condition number 2 and the planning department's condition about screening.
And I'll second that.
Larry seconded. All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you. Number 15, 1 Kurzen Street. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing 3-story townhouse by constructing a first and second story front addition, a rear third story addition, a rear second story covered deck, a rear third story partially covered deck, a front basement walkout, and converting the basement into a secondary suite. In addition, the existing rear 2-story detached garage will be converted into a 2-story laneway suite with a basement, an attached carport with 1 parking spot, and solar panels on the rooftop. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a report from Urban Forestry, 9 form letters in support, plus another letter in support from 7 Leslie Garden Lane. Okay, so Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you for your patience and what's a long day for you, and hopefully I can make this a fairly straightforward application. We had a presentation package submitted to the city, and if we can hopefully open that up, I can take you through the proposal prepared in consultation with Shinifectra.
So, Mr. Brown, I don't think we need a lengthy presentation because there doesn't seem to be any opposition. There is someone who wants to speak, and it's indicated that he's interested, but I think you should make a presentation, but if you could keep it brief, please.
I'm going to keep it very brief. So this has been a process of about a year-long consultation with all of city staff to work on what's going to end up being a Governor's General Award, probably the 15th for my client, who is Bridget Shim, a well-renowned architect. And this is just leading edge in terms of what she's done. And I say that because if you look on the plan that's before you, number 7, where she lives, actually won a Governor's General Award. I think it was back in 1994. And I'll take you to that photo at the very end. This shows you the eclectic nature of the area with townhouses, singles, and semis. And it shows you the site with the existing building in the back. And we've given you outlines so you can see through and around the site to see in a simple form the changes made to the proposal. But every one of them are improvements to what exists there today to accommodate a laneway house. If you go to the second slide, what we're showing is the existing balcony on the left side, on the second and third floor. It's an existing situation in terms of that setback. It shows you the rehabilitation of the existing building in the back, creating a green space where there's pavement currently, reinforcing the residential neighborhood character, and the sustainable features, including photovoltaic panels and solar heating. It's, again, leading edge, and in my 30-plus years, I've actually never seen anything like it in terms of what Bridget's done. If we go to the next slide, it shows you just the outline of the existing buildings and the technical nature of the variances relating to existing building length, existing building width, replacing an ugly garage with an actual covered carport in the back to provide parking in a sensitive way, making sure we had no views or windows over adjacent properties. And in fact, the front, the actual lawn area on the next slide, is improved upon with a stair that encroaches into the city road allowance being removed. We try to show that on the red outline and the line showed. And again, providing more front yard landscaping that exists today that exceeds what the bylaw would require in terms of the actual usable space. It's just the existing building that creates the variance. And then the last slide that I've shown you, or the second last slide, shows you that in orange is the only area leading out to the deck that has the variance that's outside of that height parameter that we've shown outlined in red, and then the photo V panels on top. I'm going to go to the final slide. The final slide is the 7 Leslie Garden proposal. It was a laneway house that received the Governor General's Award in 1994, and it shows some of the work that Bridget's worked on. So while laneway houses are new standards today in the 2000s, and we're still not all the way there because of the variances that are sometimes needed, she started this back in 93, 2007, with 2 examples of what Bridget's brought to the city, and I'm actually quite amazed to see and quite excited to see what comes out of this should you deem this worthy of approval. And I want to thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you. Lowen All. Where's it, Ali?
Is he here? Mr. and Mrs. Lewin, you've been unmuted.
Oh, Lewin.
Hello, 17 Kurzen Street, Mr. or Mrs. Lewin All. I'm going to remove you from the hearing and then give your cell phone a call. Hopefully we can connect that way.
Meanwhile, can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Okay, there are two questions. The first one is, I just wonder where the part that where the rear auxiliary building is it always part of the lot, or has it been incorporated sometime in the past? It's the first question. The second question is, the existing, so the two-story garage, is it really just used as a garage?
So our clients bought it as it is. There was actually built on it when they bought it sort of a wood structure on top of the garage. But yeah, it was just a garage structure and sort of open area there. And my understanding is it's been sort of a single lot with the 1 and 1R Curzon in that orientation for quite some time. I actually looked it up on sort of historical Google Maps to find that out. But yeah, it's been there for a while, and they bought it in that condition.
Okay, the first question, I don't understand your answer. Is it always a separate lot and until it was bought and merged into one, or was always one single lot with two structures on it?
Let me confirm in 1 minute. Bear with me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was no response.
Okay.
My clients confirmed it was always one lot with two separate structures in the front and in the back, so it actually, it's always been one lot.
Okay, so if you have any further questions, the other person who was going to speak in interest is not available. So we are now in committee. Any comments, any questions, or do we have a motion? Carl?
I have comments. Carl, go ahead first. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to echo Mr. Brown's enthusiasm for the application. I think this is a superb and innovative urban solution. I would hope it would influence some other solutions in the future. I have absolutely no difficulty with it, and in fact, I'm incredibly enthusiastic about having this included as a part of the city's built environment. And I'd be happy to support the application.
So make a motion.
No, I want to make some comments too.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yes, because it has been a difficult case for me, because there are two parts of it, but it's not that I'm not in support of it, but I just like to express my comment, and I do not want to be seen as interpreted. So the bylaw concerning laneway houses in such a way that this application been used, because I do not think that it fit that. Honestly, the house is going to be built bigger than the main house. I think the intent of the laneway house is not created for that purpose. I just want to express that. And the reason why I can support this application is mainly because they're taking an existing condition, which is not very nice or well used, and make great improvement of the existing one without changing it too much physically in terms of massing, but benefit a great deal in terms of architectural solution for the site. And that's the only reason I support it, not because it's actually carry the intent of the laneway bylaw. Maybe the applicant as architect, she's a visionary. Maybe if she will make change in the future, that we have something more comprehensive bylaw to govern, to include this type of development.
Okay, Carl, do you have your motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I don't share Yim's concern on this. I think this is a laneway suite applied to a very unique site, and I think it's inventive. I'd like to move approval of the application with the only condition being forestry condition number 1.
Seconder?
I'll
Larry?
second that, Chair, just with the added comment. I agree with Carl on this one. Spectacular design, very creative, adaptive reuse of what was probably a bit of an eyesore in that community and in that street. So, and you know, I'm not an architect like my two colleagues are, but I would suggest that this is a fairly spectacular design. So I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. I suggest, we're now at 16. I suggest we take a short break for, say, 5 minutes. Don't you guys have to switch to YouTube at some point? Yim will be here shortly. Okay, we're back on number 16, 164 Woodmount Avenue. The purpose of the application to alter the existing two-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a rear ground floor addition, kitchen extension, and a second-story rear addition. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and 2 form letters in support. Lisa Blois?
Yeah, hi, it's Lisa Blois. Yeah, hi, it's Lisa Blois.
Yeah, we can't hear you very well.
Is that better?
Yes, it is. So can we
So is
have
that
your...
better?
Yep. Can we have your name and your address, please?
Yeah, I'm Lisa Blois and I'm the homeowner at 164 Woodmount Avenue.
Okay.
So I wanted to, first off, thank you for your time to review and consider our application. So we are planning to do a rear addition on an existing site that's already, we have a ground floor extension right now that will be made into a second-story addition as well. So I feel like the variances that we're requesting are minor in nature.
Yeah, I don't think we need a presentation. It's pretty straightforward. So do you have anything you want to say before we take it to the panel?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Panel, any questions? Do we have comments or a motion? Larry?
Chair, I think this is a very straightforward application, and the variances are quite minor. I think the proposal is quite in keeping with the neighborhood. I don't think it'll have any negative impact at all. I would move approval of this application with no conditions.
Seconder? Carl? Thank you. All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you. Number 17, 899 Manning Avenue. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story semi-detached dwelling by enclosing the front porch. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, 3 form letters in support, 2 people from Manning and 1 from Vermont Avenue, and correspondence in opposition from 902 Manning Avenue. Mr. Dang?
Hi, yes, good afternoon, Mr. Speaker and members of the committee. My name is Oliver Dang, and I am the architect and represent my client at 899 Manning Avenue.
What's your address, sir?
My address is 155 Evelyn Avenue.
Okay. I don't think, sir, we need a presentation. Do you have anything to say before I take it to the panel?
No, I don't.
Okay. Panel, any questions or comments, or do we have a motion? Carl?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is very straightforward as well. It's a minor porch enclosure. There's nothing that I can see that's detrimental to the neighbors or the community. I'd like to move approval with no conditions.
A seconder? Yim, thank you. All in favor? Yim? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 18. Sanford Avenue. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story detached dwelling by constructing a one-story rear addition, a two-story rear addition, a third-floor addition, and a rear above-grade deck. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. Mr. Higgins.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. I'm here, ready and willing.
Good. Tell us, for the record, sir, we need your name and your address.
And if you could speak up just a little bit, I've got my volume up right at the max. It's Peter Higgins of Peter Higgins Architect Incorporated, 124 Merton Street, Suite 204, Toronto.
Okay. So, this looks pretty straightforward. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Higgins, before I take it to the panel?
Well, we were, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just take 2 minutes at max. We were speaking with the planner who was concerned about the height. We explained to him, and if you were to bring up the front and the rear facades would be helpful under the plans. The height overage really only occurs at the front peak, and the reason for that, if we can go to the side elevation, is that's the rear. So here we see on the side elevation the extension of the existing pitched roof, which raises up on the same angle and covers the angled roof that you see on the rear elevation, because we can't have drainage on both sides, this being a semi-detached house. So we have a very small amount of overage on the top. The FSI increase we think is very modest. It's just for a growing family of Carolyn Taylor and Michael Hogan and their new baby. They wanted to be able to access space on the 3rd floor. There had been a tiny attic there before, and so this is, yes, changing the height, but we've had no opposition from anyone. We worked out things with the planner, and we do have 1 letter of support from number 28, Sanford. So I think what's before you is a very minimal and hopefully you will agree a well-placed addition to this street. The neighbor, by the way, to the west, immediately beside, who shares the semi, is also interested in doing a 3rd floor, so hopefully we'll get a chance to even out the roof line.
Right. Thank you, sir. Any questions, panel? Have comments? A motion? Yim?
Yeah, I would like to move for approval because I think the straightforward application, they're asking for 2 variances, and what they're asking, the amount is moderate, and with no conditions, I move for approval.
All right, seconder. Carl, all in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 19, 20 Harshaw Avenue. Purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling by constructing a 1-story front addition with a 3rd-story deck, a 2nd and 3rd-story addition, and a rear 2-story addition with a ground floor deck and 3rd-story deck. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, 3 form letters in support by 3 properties on Harshaw Avenue. Mr. Mintoff.
Hello?
Mr. Mintoff?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There you go. Hi, I'm Larry Mintoff, and my street address is 39 Old Mill Road, Suite 905, and I am the agent representing my clients, the homeowners of 20 Harshaw Avenue.
Okay. I don't believe we need a presentation, sir. Do you have anything to say before I take it into committee?
Other than the fact that we try to be as sensitive as possible to the streetscape, the density, the bulk of the building, acknowledging other properties on the street, keeping within what we would consider minor variances. We did get a verbal approval from 18 Harshaw, our neighbors. For some reason, they didn't want to sign a form, but there was certainly no objections there. Our objective was really to design a house to expand upon their existing, to suit their needs as a growing family, and to stay within the eclectic, dense design of the street and try not to set a precedent, and I don't think we really have based on what has happened on the street recently.
Okay. Yes, Larry?
Just a question of the agent. The FSI, so you're going to 1.1. Do you know what the current FSI is?
The current FSI, okay, so we're at, we're literally, the existing house is rather small. It's at 1,075 square feet. We're going to 2,700 square feet. You know, it's certainly an increase. The FSIs on other homes on the street fall within this area based on some of the recent builds. I've got a few statistics here that I actually submitted for your reference. But let's just say that we've obviously kept the house we're at 2,700 square feet. So yes, the FSI at 1.1 seems certainly dense for the property, but it by no means has it been setting a precedent based on other builds on the street, and it's still within a size that we feel that would support their needs.
Right. Any further questions? All right. Do we have a motion?
Carl, are you motioning?
I am. I'm trying to get my screen to respond.
When you put up your hand, Carl, your hand goes off screen, so it's hard to tell that you've got your hand up.
I need a wider screen, right, or a bigger hand.
Shorter
unless
arm.
my colleagues have any questions, I think that I'd like to first of all say this was an excellent submission in terms of giving us the correct information to deal with. I was originally concerned with this because of the dominant of two-story dwellings in the area, but I think that the designer in this case has undertaken his objective to be contextually supportive by stepping back the third floor substantially on both sides, and I think it's successful. I think that what he's come up with will in fact be supportive of and consistent with the general form of the street. I don't have any difficulties with it. The only suggestion I would have is that we tie, because I think, again, the solution here is unique. I think that the approval should be tied to plans.
Could we have a second?
Carl, did you notice whether they had any screening on the third floor balcony? I didn't notice.
Sorry?
I didn't know the plans whether it had screening there. If there is no screening, I might suggest we should condition in for one.
I actually have a note about that. I missed that. Sorry, Larry. You're right.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, so just a little friendly amendment to that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Carl, your motion includes screening on the third floor deck?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't find my notes, but I had the same concern that Larry raised when I was reviewing this, and I've got so many notes I can't find it. But yes, I agree with that. I think it should be 1.5 meter screening on the third floor deck.
Okay. You second that, Larry? Okay.
Sure.
All in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 2201 Howard Park Avenue. And the purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2.5-story detached dwelling by constructing a third-story addition. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. Leah Wilger.
Yes, Leah Wilger here, Renew Architect. I'm at 215 Withrow Avenue and am the agent for the owner on this property.
Right. Okay. I don't think we need a presentation. Do you have something to say before we take it to the committee?
I'll just say quickly that the proposal does not change the streetscape. The the addition at the rear mirrors exactly what the next door neighbor has already done. And there's a number of other developments in the neighborhood that are very similar, both facing the rear on the opposite street and across the street going the other way. So I think it's in keeping with what's already going on in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, panel? We have comments or a motion?
Chair, I'll take up for this. I agree exactly with what the agent said. The third floor addition is massed towards the rear. It doesn't impact all the streetscapes, and it does exactly what's being done next door. I thought it was a sensitive design. I think it's quite, the variances are quite minor. I think it's quite supportable, and I'm happy to motion to approve this application. I don't believe there are any.
Okay, seconder, Yim, all in favor? You have your approval. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we could use a 1-minute break just to switch the YouTube session.
Okay.
So to people watching us on YouTube, we're going to switch to the PM session number 2.